Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. So I previously covered a story where police were called to a house in relation to a domestic dispute. Now, they didn't lay any criminal charges in relation to that, but they did, in the course of their sort of investigation and response, seize the individual's firearms. I understand there were two safes and a number of guns, as well as a couple of crossbows that were seized at that time. Now, they started a peace bond process, and a peace bond doesn't involve criminal charges. It's a separate kind of process. I can talk about peace bonds in another video, but that ultimately they dismissed the peace bond. They didn't proceed with it. So that individual went to say, hey, I'd like my guns back, and was fairly persistent in that. And then eventually the police said, about that, I know you wanted your guns back, but turns out we got a court order that forfeits those guns to us. Those guns now belong to us, and we're going to destroy them. So I had done a video on that, and I had noted that this seemed like it was not legally correct. And what I mean by that is that normally the police shouldn't be able to destroy your firearms or to have them forfeited to them without some sort of notice to you that that's being sought. There's various ways that can happen, but they all involve some sort of notice to you. And this individual had said, I didn't get any notice. Like, I didn't receive any notice. So how come they've forfeited my guns? So I have a bit of a follow-up to that. And this is out of the Penticton Herald. It was just January 29th. I'll link the article in the description below. But this one's actually one of the rare kind of happy ending stories. So let's have a look. Titled, RCMP Relents After Seeking to Destroy Seized Guns. They say 16 months after seizing guns from an Okanagan Falls man's house in the wake of a domestic dispute that never resulted in charges, the RCMP have finally agreed to return the firearms to their rightful owner. On behalf of the RCMP, the Attorney General of Canada agreed through a consent order signed December 11th in BC Supreme Court in Penticton to return 11 guns and 2 crossbows to Michael Rupert. Now, what you might be wondering, what is a consent order? So it's an order with the court, so it's legally binding, and the RCMP don't typically give guns back without some sort of court order or, direction. But a consent order is one that's not being fought in court. There's no challenge on it. It's just one that's done by agreement. So it looks like they didn't have to go through a court battle other than to bring it into court, because there was actually a court process started. So the Attorney General appears to have sort of given up and said, yes, we'll give the guns back. And there's a quote from the lawyer on the file. My client's obviously very happy. And that's Don Skogstad. So that, obviously he is going to be very happy because, many of us have firearms with a lot of value. And that value may go beyond just monetary. Sometimes there are firearms with significant sentimental value. One of the only things I own that belongs to, or that ever belonged to my grandfather, who actually died before I was born, so it's really the only sort of connection I have to him, is a shotgun that he once had. So, these kinds of connections are fairly common, particularly because firearms are long-lasting goods, so they tend to be passed, from family member to family member. And many times there will be people with sort of fond memories. The first time they went hunting with a parent, this was the gun they used, that sort of thing. So there's some, interesting quotes here. Some of this is kind of rehashing the previous thing, but if you haven't watched that one, A, you might want to, but B, we can go over some of this because they talk about the petition that was filed with the courts. And so here's what I think is a fairly critical quote here. To be clear, this forfeiture took place without any notice, before any adjudication had been made on the petitioner's case before the courts, and without merit, as the firearms were not involved in this or any other incident, states the petition. So And apparently they note that the RCMP exhibit clerk sought permission to dispose of the guns to make room for more items. So that's kind of an interesting reason to get rid of something. But, the lawyer says he doesn't fault them for that, but does fault them for not providing notice to the client. Notice is typically required, especially when you're talking about somebody's, property interests. The lawyer also comments that he says that he hopes it'll serve as a good reminder for justices of the peace when asked to authorize destruction of personal property. And he says, I don't think there's enough supervision of the justices by the judges, and I think this will go a long way to that end. Now, I don't know. I want to be a little hesitant here in terms of blaming the justice of the peace, because I don't know what evidence was or was not before the justice of the peace. For instance, if the justice of the peace was told that notice was given and believed that because that was what they were told, then I'm not sure I could fault the justice of the peace here. But if they didn't make those inquiries, that's a problem. So I don't know where this went off the rails, just that it did, because notice has to be given for these proceedings. There just isn't a way for them to do this without you being given the opportunity to attend and to present your side of the story and to present why you should be able to keep the firearms. There's various sort of seizure provisions, but all of them involve some opportunity to address the court. And that might be, by fighting criminal charges, or it might be by fighting the forfeiture itself, depending on how they proceed. There's unfortunately too many different ways for them to try to get to the ultimate goal of we keep your guns for me to cover in this one. They also note Penticton RCMP will not be commenting on this matter outside of affirming that the firearms were seized under provisions of the Criminal Code, traversed the necessary justice and court processes, then eventually returned. Well, I don't think that's entirely correct, because the necessary justice and court processes require service. They require service of a notice. And so, to say that they've traversed the necessary justice and court processes, I don't see how here. So ultimately, I'm glad for the outcome. This is one of the rarer happy stories. I'm really glad to hear that this individual has gotten his guns and his crossbow, and hopefully also the gun safes back. But it shouldn't have ever come to this. It shouldn't have been a situation where he had to fight in order to get this return. So I do hope that there will be some additional sort of supervision and so forth, but I note that it's very unlikely that there's going to be any accountability in this sort of scenario. I don't think any police officers are going to be punished, for instance. I don't think the justice of the peace is going to be punished. And again, I don't know where this went wrong. I can't say that for sure. But whoever screwed up, I don't think they're going to end up facing any real consequences or punishment. There's nothing that'll really stop them from doing it again. So, well, it's a happy ending. It's not sort of a slam dunk for gun owners, if that makes any sense. It's really a win for this individual who I congratulate. I'm really glad to see that that he's got his firearms back. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this has been enlightening or educational. Please like this video. Please share it with your friends. Please subscribe to see more content. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level, Demo, Sir Daniel Wicks of Alberta, Canada's National Firearms Association, and Kyle Martin. At the $20 level, Cameron Johnson, Kevin Fleet, and Dale Nesbitt, as well as a number of you at the $10 level who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has armed you with knowledge.